Hello, and welcome back to the Distant Tourist Podcast. I'm Robert,
I'm Thomas.
and we are back after taking a bit of a longer hiatus than we expected. We have some more episodes coming down the pipeline. We're just taking a little bit of extra time to get them ready, but I thought in the meantime we may just talk about ourselves a little bit and kind of what we're planning and maybe a bit about ourselves.
Yeah.
So, Thomas, would you like to explain to the people who you are?
Well, okay. Hey there, everyone. I am Thomas. I am an Asian Studies major at Sac State. I am planning on graduating hopefully after this next spring semester. So it would be spring 2021, and I should have a a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, calm down here.
Yeah, no, not yet. A bachelor's degree in Asian Studies and a minor in Japanese. Yeah.
Nice. And for the record, I am Robert. I am an English major, hoping to also graduate after this spring semester, and I'm hoping to eventually become a teacher after getting my bachelor's, maybe even a professor down the line, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, that's a bit about me. This winter break, I kind of took a bit longer than I expected off. I don't know about you, but I kind of spent a lot of time with the family and then took some time to go see some friends around the country.
I wasn't able to because for me, in order for me to graduate on time, I had to take 2 extra classes of winter intersession. So for all the people that don't know what winter intersession is at Sac State, it pretty much is like they take all the material that you would do over the course of, I think
It'd be about 16 weeks normally.
Yeah, 16 weeks. And they condense it down into 3 weeks.
And how was the workload?
It was interesting. So because everything's online, it was a matter of watching a bunch of like lecture videos and then doing a lot of discussion and writing. So if you were really good at writing, the classes were a breeze, except for the final exams. My God, were those bad?
Were those like essay, multiple choice mixtures, or?
So I took classical mythology, and then I also took American pop culture, which when you think American pop culture, you think, oh, dude, Star Trek, like Star Wars, even things that more modern times, like things that are going on like right now. You think pop culture, like, you know, maybe they might throw in some memes in there, maybe, who knows, right?
Let's calm down. We're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there quite yet. But well, I was expecting that. It was more of a intro to anthropology class instead. It wasn't like, oh, let's look at all these cool things. It was just like, okay, this is how we make the distinction between race and ethnicity. And this is how religion plays a role in cultural diversity across America. Which sounds a lot more professional than, dude, we could talk about maybe Star Trek or something like that. That'd be great. But the final exam for that one was really, really tough. That had 5 short essay questions at the end, and then 20 multiple guess.
Wait, 20 multiple choice questions?
Yeah, multiple guess.
Oh, okay. Didn't get us on that in the first time. But so do you feel like, I guess, you're informed on pop culture in a different kind of way, or?
I feel a lot more informed of the introduction to anthropology.
So if you were gonna tell anybody about that class, that's just how you describe it.
It was pretty much an intro to anthropology. It wasn't kind of like, I mean, we were looking at how the key ideas and aspects were how they were represented in American culture, but for the most part, it was just kind of like, here's anthropology.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like at least it was maybe a bit of an enlightening kind of class. I don't know.
Yes and no. You know, every class has its takeaways. I felt like he did do a really good job with his video lectures. He did a Zoom type thing.
You mean like the professor?
Yeah, the professor did a really good job on the video lectures.
Oh, okay.
The other class, on the other hand, the classical mythology class, it sounded like she took her phone, like she was recording off of her phone, and she put it in the center of like a dining table, and she was teaching like 3 students. and she sounded so far away, and it was only audio. There was no visuals, nothing like that. It was just pretty much only audio, and like sound quality was horrendous. And then because she was still teaching 3 people, you still got kind of like the really kind of weird questions. You know, like there's always like that one student in the class that kind of asks like a really weird question that has nothing to do with like the subject.
Yeah.
Like one person referenced Wrath of the Titans when we were talking about like Zeus or something like that. So it was kind of like you still had that kind of randomness in the class. But what really got to me was the audio quality.
I guess even through Zoom, classes have new problems to deal with.
Yes, unfortunately. But yeah, the actual class itself wasn't too hard. But the final test again was like she just took random texts out of the myths.
Yeah.
And she just like put it on a test and said like, where is this from?
Oh, okay.
And or like you're supposed to be able to base a lot of stuff off of just random text, which was really difficult. Also, I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't reading every single chapter like you're supposed to be.
And there's the confession of every college student.
Well, yeah, I actually did rent the book because she was like, I require actual like quotations from the book. So you have to get the book.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really did not touch the book.
Yeah, that's not surprising. There's always just the one class where it's like, oh, we have 5 books required. You might use one passage out of 4 of them, and like the one is the actual required one.
To be honest with you, most classes that are like, oh, this textbook is required, and if you don't, like, if it's just supposed to be like you're reading it at home type thing,
Yeah.
I never read it. I have half the time I never even get the book because it's kind of like what.
This is turning into a confession podcast.
I mean,
tell me, how many of these stories did you actually read?
I mean, yeah. The thing is, like, when there are things like because I'm an Asian studies major, there are books that I have to read, like the Tales of Genji. I read that, loved it.
Yeah.
There's the Tales of Heke, read that, loved it. There's Train to Pakistan, which was really interesting. But yeah, so like these extra books that you're supposed to read, that there's an actual book quiz. You have to read that.
Yeah.
You know, but most of the time, because I'm an Asian studies major, I'm like, this is really interesting. But the ones that I don't really like, I guess, double down on reading is the extra like general education things that like I don't have too much interest in.
Yeah, and that's kind of the struggle for basically every undergrad.
Yes.
Well, thank you for confessing to your sins, I guess.
No problem. What did you do over winter?
I spent a lot of time with my family, got a lot of stuff moved around for them because as COVID continues going on, we're moving some more stuff around. Spent Christmas and New Year's with them. Didn't do anything special for New Year's because I just didn't even really want to try going out. But yeah, it was refreshing to see them, get away from all the work and from last semester and just kind of let myself reset. About a week or so after New Year's, I was just like, oh, I should go visit my friend up in Washington. And so a friend of mine and I went to go visit her. We stayed for about a week, and it was really cool. I realized that when it comes to the northwest of the United States, I kind of just assume there's just Portland and Seattle, and I haven't really had a chance to explore around that part of Washington. And I didn't realize that a large part of Washington in the most northwestern part is just islands. It's just little islands with bridges going everywhere and just little settlements here and there. I say little, but there's some pretty settled towns. And so, of course we spent one day going to Seattle because it's right there. Why not? But yeah, spent some time looking around, running into a lot of little settlements that had their own little ports and stuff. And it was just kind of a nice change of pace to just kind of, catch up with a friend, see some new things. Of course, practice social distancing, of course. But yeah, it took some time coming up with more concepts for the podcast. And yeah, it's kind of just my vacation in a nutshell. Well, I'd argue a lot more laid back than yours.
Yes, mine was very much going ham. I pretty much did the classes, and then so Sac State made it so that you would take the classes, and then as soon as you're done, you would start up on the spring semester, because they're just so nice like that.
Didn't have to deal with that one, so
So I had one weekend where my family was like, we need to do something. And so that weekend I went fishing, ocean fishing.
Oh, so that was your kind of vacation kind of thing?
Yeah, we went to the coast and we went ocean fishing. And at first it went really horrible because there was a horrible riptide and a current type. Like the current was so bad. So you would cast out, right? And then you pretty much reel it into the tension on the pole, on the line. And then what was happening was, because the current was so strong, it would take our weights and our like weights and bait and everything and hooks and just carry it down the beach. And so at one point I was literally just holding the pole and walking down the beach, and the weight was still passing me.
And this is why I don't go ocean fishing.
So, as you can imagine, that didn't go well at all.
Did you at least catch anything?
So yes. So what happened was we switched fishing spots, because at that point we're like, we're not catching anything, but it was still really early in the morning. It was still like 7:00 in the morning, and we're just like, okay, what do we do now? We could either go south, and try to fish in a similar area and I just hope that there's no current, or we can go north where there's like kind of like a cove and hope that there's fish there and there's no current there. So we decided to go north, and then we set ourselves up. The wind was horrendous. It, like, by the time we were done with everything, we sat back in the car. We were so exhausted because just like standing out in the wind, it just takes a lot out of you. I don't know what it is. It just like saps away your strength.
I mean, try not to fall over kind of will do that.
Maybe. But yeah, once we moved there though, it got way better for fishing though, because there's no like crazy current, anything like that. My first cast I cast out, I caught a fish, and we caught a total of 9 to 10 fish.
Oh, okay.
Over the course of like a couple hours.
Did you keep them or toss them?
Keep them. They were big enough that we could have kept it.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we took them home, gutted, cleaned, descaled, and I had nice fried fish I made the next day.
Nice.
But yeah, fresh fish, freshly caught fish is amazing. I love fishing. I don't do too much of it nowadays, but especially ocean fishing is so much fun. Plus, the pole that you have is like twice the size of you.
Oh, yeah. No, I have one myself, and it's just like, this is too much for me.
Yeah, they're actually huge. And then the one thing that I really like is you have to time it right when you're casting. So you literally have to sit there ready to cast, and then you have to like wait on the waves. So when the waves like go out, that's when you pretty much charge at the ocean, cast, and then run away from it. Because like you're trying to get in between the waves. If you've done it enough times, you can start to kind of see the patterns of the waves, where it's just like, okay, if there's two waves that are right behind each other, you know that's going to be a really big wave that's going to go super far. But if there's usually a wave and then there's a pretty good sized gap between them, then the water is going to sink down, or as it's going down, the next wave is going to come, and it's not going to be as, I guess, it won't come out as far, because water is going in as water is coming out, and so there's no momentum. So yeah, it's literally like things like that you have to keep an eye out, and you just kind of charge at the ocean when you're ready.
I see you made the most out of that weekend.
Yes, it was really nice, but it was still like I had to be back Sunday night
Ready to go to school.
Ready to go to school the next morning at 7:00.
Hooray.
Yes.
Glad that wasn't me.
So yes. So speaking about classes,
Mm-hmm.
what classes are you taking this semester?
I am only taking 2 because that's all I have left, and that means I am only studying Japanese. So I'm getting my bachelor's in English, but the English is already over. It's all just about the minor this semester.
Nice.
Yep. I mean, I know you're taking the same classes, so I mean, you know, I might as well just introduce them here. I'm like going through, what is it, interpreting Japanese literature? I forget the name of the class, but like.
Yes. I believe it is called Interpreting Japanese Literature.
Yeah, and then finishing, I guess, the 3rd-year Japanese classes, so I guess that's the best way to phrase that. And yeah, that's it for me. I mean, you know, once that's over, I'm done here, like, trying to spend most of my time either A, working on this podcast, or B, finishing some of my other side projects, but, you know, it's going to be a pretty lax semester. I feel like a lot of opportunity here. So, I mean, it's not like your semester where I know you're taking, like, what, technically, like, 5 classes?
Kind of, yes, 5. I have to take those Japanese classes, and then I'm also taking 2 Asian studies classes. One that is talking about Asian migration, which is like, it's just looking at people across Asia. It seems like them moving to America, but I'm not entirely sure. This first week has been talking about that whole migration over to America. And then the other one is Asia in the World Today, which I have taken a contemporary Asia class before. So I'm interested to see where it's going to be different at home. At
all.
I already see a lot of overlap because I've taken the same professor's class multiple times, and she does use the same resource multiple times over the course of the classes, which is nice because then I know what we're talking about and I know a great deal about it already.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, I'm taking that, and then I'm also taking another Japanese class or another class because I'm 1 unit short.
Just hate to take it away from you.
It's literally 1 unit short, and it's actually killing me. And so yeah, I'm doing like another kind of Japanese class where I'm just practicing speaking. So yeah, speaking about Japanese,
Hey.
do you have any tips for the Japanese learners out there?
Just keep at it, honestly, because I mean, I had time to study over the break, and I did when I could here and there, but it's like, if you keep with it, it's less of a hurdle to get back on than if you just kind of let it go, especially over the summers. Oh my gosh, after the first year when I didn't study at all over the summer and then entered the second year, it was such a brutal first 2 weeks just to remember everything that went over, and that'll just get harder if you don't keep up with your fundamentals and just keeping with it. So yeah, keep up with the fundamentals. That's really just my advice. Just keep at it.
I totally understand that, because for me, I took a year off of Japanese and I learned Spanish instead, because I went to a community college called Shasta College, and they stopped their Japanese classes after the first year.
Oh, so
they wouldn't do any more because they didn't have enough enrollment people, like people enrolled for it, even though I really wanted to do it, and every single year I would sign up for it. There was just not enough people, so they would always cancel it. So because I still needed classes,
yeah,
and I really like language, period. I just love learning languages. I took up some more Spanish. I took Spanish all throughout high school. Love Spanish. And then I took the first year of Spanish. But also, which was fantastic, was everyone around me spoke Spanish. Like,
oh, so yeah, like, you know, especially in California, you just get to use it all the time.
Like, everyone at work used Spanish. I had a second job where I was a teacher's assistant at a English as a second language class. So there was people that spoke Spanish there. The other teacher's assistant was from Ecuador.
Oh, well,
and
yeah.
she would actually help me with my Spanish homework and with my Spanish. So literally every single day I was using Spanish. So my Spanish level just went through the roof. Where I was, I wouldn't say I was able to speak fluently. However, listening, I got a really good understanding of what people were saying, and I was really good at speaking it to people. Benefit of that was I was doing really great at Spanish.
But the catch?
But the negative of it was my Japanese took a huge backseat.
There it is.
I had a saving grace where they had a Japanese conversation class the last semester I was at the school. So I did have like just barely some practice before like hopping back into Japanese. But when I first transferred to Sac State, my original thought was to do a double major, one in Spanish and one in Japanese.
That would have been an impressive or a diverse portfolio, I'd argue.
Yes. But after the first semester, I signed up for Asian Studies classes because they discontinued the Japanese actual like bachelor's degree. And so I went with Asian Studies instead. Love Asian Studies. I'm really happy I went into it. But I pretty much stopped taking any kind of Spanish classes because I was trying to focus on getting things in order for Japanese because I really wanted to prioritize it. And then I just didn't take any extra ones because the way I set things up, I had like already 4 to 5 classes of Asian Studies. And if I would have done Spanish as well, that would have been another like 3 classes on top of that at least.
So that really would have just taken more time and just kind of spread you out.
Yeah, I would have just been really, really like overburdened. Like there was no way I would have been able to have any sort of social life. Also, I think a lot of Spanish classes were going on at the same time as Japanese classes.
Oh, so you just made the pick to.
So yeah, at one point I did have to think about, okay, do I want Spanish at all, or do I want to focus on Japanese? And so so I focused on Japanese, and now my Spanish has taken the back seat.
Yep. Good old, you know a second language, and then you just throw it out the window to learn a third.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still things like when I'm listening to Spanish, I still understand quite a bit.
I think after a certain point, when you get the ear for it, you kind of just keep that at least.
I still listen to a lot of Spanish music, like Bad Bunny. God, I love Bad Bunny. But yeah, but there is a lot of Spanish music that I love listening to. I still can understand a lot of it. But when it comes to speaking, the issue of having so many languages is when you go to say something, the other language like takes its place. So when you want to say something in Spanish, sometimes like Japanese words would kind of jump in there. So
Yeah, I had a similar problem where my first test, I answered one question when trying to speak in Spanish instead of Japanese, and I was mortified with myself because it was just like wrong language. I just threw out the wrong complete language, and I just panicked. Didn't make that mistake the second time though. Not again.
Not again. But yeah, for my advice for Japanese learners is identify which one you're better at kanji or grammar. Because I feel like there's almost 2 types of people that learn Japanese. It is either you're really good at kanji but bad at grammar, or you're really good at grammar but bad at kanji. Me personally, I am a person that is really good at grammar but bad at kanji. Both of our friends, Jake, he is amazing at kanji. He knows a lot about kanji, but he has a harder time with grammar. And I feel like once you know where you're having a harder time on, like that is where you can focus on. Like if you're like me, who's like, oh, kanji, dude, it's the bane of my existence, then that means you can focus more on kanji.
Yep, you just get a notebook, get that grid paper, and you just start writing.
I think that maybe that might be my issue, is like having to sit down and just keep writing and trying to memorize all these things. But also, another thing that I found out by talking to a lot of Nihonjin, a lot of people from Japan, is the amount of people that can write kanji is actually going down.
Oh, I believe that.
Because you can text it and it autofills it. Everything's like electronic, so it's automatically like you can read it. You can read the kanji. Like this is where I'm at right now, where it's like I can read the kanji, but trying to remember it, how to write it by hand off the top of my head is a huge struggle.
Oh, I know. I got worse at writing kanji as soon as we went to online classes because as soon as I just knew the word and like being able to like you said, like texting, just autofilling it, and it's just like, oh no. So now I have to actually set aside time to just sit down with a notebook and you just write it over and over again. Also, and I don't want to like completely throw this off, but a quick tangent. Figure out how you want to hold the pencil or something because, oh my gosh, if you hold it wrong, like your muscles will start tensing up very quickly.
I've actually changed up my writing, kind of like, what is it? Medium. My writing medium. Getting artsy over here.
Oh, calm down. We're an art podcast now. Confessionals and now art. Where next?
Right. But like for first, I was just doing pencil and paper. Found out that I was just burning through paper. Like there was no tomorrow. And then I went to whiteboard and marker.
Yeah.
So that's a lot easier. So if you're like, man, I don't want to go through pages on pages upon pages of like paper, whiteboard, and a marker is where it's at. And then after that, I actually ended up getting a tablet that had a pen.
Ooh,
and
fancy.
I know it's quite the upgrade. And I used the pen to just on like a painting thing, and I use that to draw out my kanji now.
That's actually a pretty good resource. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an app that let you just practice writing specific kanji with...
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of apps that have like the actual kanji on it, and then you just follow your finger of like, oh, this is Genki. And then, you just do up Genki, which still also works. I know that there's some apps that seem very nice, but I don't know. I don't know about that Duolingo or anything like that.
I mean, Duolingo is kind of a meme, but I wouldn't technically recommend it.
When I was the teacher's assistant back in the ESL class, at the very end, they were kind of using a little bit of Duolingo because there's one person from Russia that spoke absolutely nothing, like no English whatsoever. And she came in super late into the semester. So where the other students, we were split up into three groups. There was the beginners who didn't know like any English, just maybe baseline hello, goodbye.
Yeah.
Then there was the
intermediate
type thing where they knew a lot more. They knew a lot of the basics. And then there was the advanced group, which was my group.
Well, calm down, buddy. Don't flex.
Well, it's because I was literally the only English speaker in the class. Even the professor, the teacher, she was from the Ukraine.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. But she had like 1 million degrees and she knew like 1 million different languages. Like she knew.
So she was a polyglot. I believe that's the term.
She was just ridiculously good with a lot of languages. But I was the only English speaker there. So anything that they needed kind of like, how does this sound in English? Or how does an American say this? They looked to me to say it.
Yeah, I will say as a person who's studied taking TESOL classes and stuff, you don't realize how much you just assume about the English language until you have to go part by part and then just start talking about it. Because it's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, why does this work this way? All right, we're going to explain why. And it's like, oh, I knew it, but I could not have told you why.
Oh no, my major thing that I messed up on and I spent an hour trying to fix idioms. So the people that don't really know exactly what an idiom is, an idiom, and this was me before I took this job. I didn't really know what an idiom was.
Yeah,
I was just an idiot, not an idiom.
Ooh, nice one.
Thank you.
Those are rare.
So it is something like in a nutshell, two birds with one stone. You don't actually mean you're hitting two birds with one stone. You're not out there in the garden with a stone trying to hit two birds with it. You know, it has, you're not being very literal in a sense. I totally forgot about this, and I didn't realize how much I used idioms until I started teaching. Because I said, I believe I said, in a nutshell, this is what this idiom means. Which I realized that I used an idiom to describe another idiom.
Yeah, I was like going to say.
And then I said, okay. So I wrote the next, in a nutshell, on the board. Okay, now I have to explain this one first before I can explain the original one.
Did you just create a chain of idioms?
I did, because then they asked me a bunch of questions, and I was like, okay, there's this other thing, but that's just like another whole nother bowl of wax. And I was like, shit. I was like, gosh, all right. And I had to write down like a whole nother bowl of wax on the board. And so I had like a list of like 6 different idioms that I had to explain.
You just hijacked the class with idioms. Congratulations.
It literally was. It was a full-on hour and a half of me going back from this long list of idioms that I had said by accident.
Wow.
Just to explain the original idiom. And ever since that day, I have never made the same mistake. So yeah, it was bad. I was like, oh my God, no.
Wow. Well, that's impressive. But I think kind of getting back to things, because we kind of got lost on tangents of idioms. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of just encapsulating it, keeping at it, and just figuring out your strengths and weaknesses is probably the best way to start learning any language. But I think especially so with Japanese. Do we have any closing remarks we want to bring up about languages? I mean, I feel like we kind of covered most
languages. Let me think here. I would say take a class. This has actually been, for me personally, this is kind of a very personal statement. I feel like you learn a lot more in a class than you do by yourself. This is not saying don't do self-study.
No, you should
I'm
especially
very,
self-study.
yeah, I'm very pro self-study. However, I'm saying like if you really want to start learning Japanese, learn it through a class, which is better because one, you're meeting more people that are learning the language. That is actually how Robert and I met, was from Japanese class. And you learn, you like meet a lot more people that are in the same thing, that like the same things you do, and that are going through the same difficulties of the language as you are.
I want to piggyback off that real quick. Going off of that, I'd say figure out which kind of study you're, because I know some people are very self-directed and can do it themselves, while other people like have to take the class. So if you're one of those people who's like, oh, I want to study, but then like you never do, definitely take a class. It'll definitely push you to do it. But if you're a self-studier, find somebody at least who can check your work, because it's very easy to just start studying something, assume that you understand it, and then get so far and then realize you didn't understand it at all. Like I've seen that a couple of times. So it's like self-studying is perfectly fine. Just make sure you have someone who can check your mistakes.
Yes. And then the one thing that is definitely a big pet, like very personal thing, that's kind of like a pet peeve, is when people learn off of anime.
Good old anime.
So like, don't get me wrong, I love anime. I watch anime a lot. It's not saying that, you can't learn things from anime. There's very big cultural things that you can learn from anime. There are, like, if you're listening to it, if you want to practice your listening, it's okay. However, if you're using anime as like your textbook, as like, I want to know how to speak it, so I'll speak it just like the anime, you're going to have a hard time in Japan, because there is a difference between like actual Japanese and then anime Japanese.
Yeah, it's kind of like speaking slang versus actually speaking, I guess, proper.
I wouldn't even go that far. I would say speaking from a comic book, as like literally going as like Superman. Don't worry, citizen, I shall be there momentarily. No one says that in real life.
Yeah.
So that is kind of like to the extent of what anime talk is. Like, this is not saying like there's, there's not some, they don't speak Japanese, because they do.
Yeah, no, they're actually. It's just it's not what you're gonna hear if you go to this like on the streets of some Japanese city and just
Yes.
listen. It's not how people are gonna talk.
Also, another word of advice: when you go to Japan, there's a thing called dialects. Dialects are different variations of Japanese, and some could be very harsh, and some could be very close to Japanese. There's obviously like Japanese is the national the national language of Japan.
Yeah.
However, since Japan is so old, each area has its own like dialect that they have. And there's actually quite often that some Japanese people can tell exactly where someone's from based off of their dialect. So yes, there are some different things, but for a lot of people that might know Spanish, the equivalent would be different countries that speak Spanish. So like Ecuadorian, like Spanish versus actually Spain Spanish.
Oh, Spain Spanish is fun.
Exactly. Like they all speak technically Spanish. However, there are different words that they use and the different slang that they use, and there's different things that there's things that are different.
Yeah,
it's not just like,
it's not just the same. Like, I mean, every region you go to has like different quirks on its own. It's like why British English and American English sound totally different.
Yes, that's kind of the same thing as well.
Yeah.
So, it's just for Japan, like almost every prefecture has its own dialect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, keep that in mind, and I guess learn on the fly if you get there.
Yes. So anyway, on that extremely happy note, I think that's where we might end the episode. Thank you everyone for watching. I would recommend maybe looking up our Facebook page. We now have a Facebook page for Distant Tourists. If you wanted to drop a follow there and maybe make start really connecting with the community, asking us questions if you have any. Also, if you guys have any ideas of that we can do in the podcast, definitely let us know.
Yeah, any sort of topics you want us to talk about. Let's open up the floodgates.
Pretty much. Or any ideas of maybe we should do this differently, or you like this, but this wasn't that great. By all means, we love feedback, and right now is the perfect time because we're trying to switch everything around. We're trying to really kind of make a better podcast for you guys.
And for the next couple weeks, I think we're going to start experimenting with certain formats for certain episodes. I mean, you'll probably see 1 week we'll do one topic one way, and then the next week some completely different. So yeah, any feedback on what you like, what you don't is perfectly good and completely appreciated.
Yeah. So until then, thank you guys for watching or listening. See ya.
Later.